episode number 101, IRONMAN Lake Placid with Kevin Smith. Welcome to the pursuit of the perfect race. I'm Coach Terry Wilson, and with each episode, I bring stories of athletes to you that share their experiences at races in order for you to learn how to have your perfect race. We'll hear stories from athletes of all ages, abilities, and races of all distances. So regardless of where you fit in, there's something in it for you. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now let the pursuit begin. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the pursuit of the perfect race. Today I have the pleasure of talking with my friend Kevin Smith about his recent race at IRONMAN Lake Placid in beautiful upstate New York, where he had a time of 14 hours, 3 minutes, 39 seconds. Kevin has been doing triathlons for the past 18 years, with his first one being on a dare where he nearly drowned. This was his fourth full distance triathlon. This race took place on July 22nd, 2018. The temperature on race day was 46 and rose to 79, with the water being 74 degrees. Also notable to mention about this year's race at Lake Placid was it was pouring rain with some hail on the bike ride. Welcome to the show, Kevin. I look forward to hearing about your race experience at beautiful Lake Placid.
Awesome. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So why did you register for this race? You took a hiatus from the full distance for quite some time, and you came back to it. Why this race and why now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I had actually said to my wife on a Monday before I registered, I'm done with the long course stuff. I was really getting into doing short course, Olympic distance. Just with my travel constraints and my schedule, it's crazy to find time to get all those long rides and runs in. The next day, a friend of mine calls me and says, hey, I want to do Lake Placid. It's my 50th birthday. And, you know, I want somebody to train with. And I just met the guy a few months previous. We've been doing a little riding together. I was like, okay. So I signed up, and he bails. Like around December, he completely bails. He said his foot hurt. I don't know. But I'm in it, and I tried to sign up for Placid. Actually, I signed up twice in the last 6 years, and I kept getting hurt. That was a big reason I gravitated away from some of the longer stuff. And, I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. And I started training, and I love training. It's fun. I love spending time on my bike. However, I much prefer to be going at 300 watts than the 200 aerobic watts that you require for something like Placid. It's kind of more of my suit. But, I wanted to complete the darn thing. I haven't done one in 10 years, and I'm 10 years older now, and my body feels a little different. So I wanted to see if I could get through it.
Okay. Now, how is your training going into this race?
You know what? I felt good. I did the Mont Tremblant, the 70.3 a month before, and a lot of my numbers were right where they were 10 years ago. So I felt really good going into it. I did all my training indoors. All my long rides I did on Trainer Road. So I had 5.5 hour rides sitting in the basement, which are mind-numbing but very efficient. I got outside a little bit for some of the harder stuff. Had probably 5 or 6 20-mile runs. So I went into it feeling really good. And, as we'll probably hear, I had some mechanical debacles throughout the day that turned what was supposed to be a race into, hey, let's just finish this sucker and get some points. But it's still worth it.
Okay. Now, what kind of plan did you use?
So I used the Trainer Road mid-volume plan, and I tweaked it some. For the most part, I followed the weekend stuff, all the long stuff I did. Some of the longer things during the week, the 2.5 hour rides on a Thursday night, really hard for me because I'm getting home at 8 or 9 o'clock from being out in the field all week. So I would tweak that and add some intensity. Did a lot of brick work on that day. So for the most part, I hit everything, but some of the longer stuff during the week I had to alter. But it seemed to work fine. I felt like my conditioning was good. Had I not had the mechanicals on the bike, where I basically lost the ability to shift gears for 90 miles of the ride, which meant I had to work a lot harder going up some of the hills. And on some of the flats, it was kind of an odd situation. My ETAP just completely shorted out in the rain, which it's not supposed to do. It's been wet, but it was my day, I guess. So I had I worked a little harder on the bike, and it cost me some on the run. But other than that, I felt like, I could have done 11 and a half, 12 hours, but this wasn't to be that day.
Okay. Now, this plan for Trainer Road, does it include swimming and run workouts as well?
It does.
Nice. I did not know that.
They amended that about, it's definitely a bike heavy plan. So that's where you get some really precise instruction. The swim and the running, it's RPE, which is not bad. I've used I've always been self-coached. I've used some of the Joe Friel stuff, which is based on pace and things like that. And that's pretty nice, and I felt like that was effective. With the trainer road, the swimming and the running was just it's a little bit easier to plan for.
Okay.
You know, yeah.
Now, what was your longest swim, bike, and runs going into Lake Placid?
I biked 5.5 hours on the trainer indoors in erg mode anywhere between 200 and 230 watts. Longest run was 21, and I did probably 2 or 3 of those, and my longest swim was 4,500 yards.
Okay. Your long runs, was the 21 miles all at one point?
Yeah. I broke it up a little bit, but really depended on what kind of time I had. So I probably had 3 or 4 where I ran 13 or 14 in the morning, went for an easy ride after that, and got off my feet for a few hours, and I went back out and ran another 5 or 6. But then I actually had 2 or 3 that were just 21-mile runs.
Okay. Now, those long runs that were all 21 at one time,
Sure.
Was that right off of a previous day's long ride, or was there a day in between the long ride and the run?
No, it was right off the previous day. The way the plan worked, it kind of alternated big volume weekends. So one weekend you would have a big volume bike ride, 5.5 hours. Shorter run that afternoon, maybe 5-6 miles, but very, RPE 4. Then the next day you get up and do a long swim, and I would transition directly to that 3-hour run. Following weekend, it would be more of a long brick. Let's get on the bike for 3-4 hours at race pace, sometimes a little bit higher, and then hop off and run for an hour, hour and a half. I think that culminated in a 4-hour ride, and I had a 10-mile run right after that, probably about 3 weeks out from Placid.
Okay. So were you doing bricks in training?
Yeah. I tried to brick as much as I could, at least one a week. And on some of the weeks where the volume was a little bit less, I would jump off and run an extra 2 or 3 miles. It's always kind of helped me to get off and transition run. Just running's the hardest part anyway, because most injury, I think that you can get a lot of bang for your buck hopping off and running 3 miles versus resting for 5 or 6 hours and then trying to go run 7 or 8.
That makes sense.
I've alternated it quite a bit, and the run is where I've had injuries in the past. So I was really cognizant of that. So I listened to my body, and if it meant run slower or bag the run, I would. I didn't bag too many runs, so I try to get out and do something.
Okay. When you're running outside, or being that you travel quite a bit for work, are you using a road ID?
Got it on right now.
Awesome.
I have road ID, and I use the live track feature on my Garmin as well. So that way, if I'm home, my wife knows where I was. Yeah, where I was. Yeah.
Well, good. I'm really glad that you're using that feature. Good. Now, what workouts did you do in training that gave you the confidence to go into Lake Placid prepared, knowing that it's going to be a hilly bike course and a hilly run?
So workout-wise, I did a lot of the high-volume stuff at prescribed intensities, which I think makes a big difference. If you're training with power, I think I live in a flat part of the country. Western New York, Buffalo we have some hilly parts, but they're well south, and I hate putting my car in the bike to drive an hour to go train. So when I was outdoors, I rode a lot on flat courses, but most of my training was indoors. So I would do a lot of prescribed intensity, a lot of intervals at prescribed power. I did a lot of long Swift rides, climbing, the island, I guess the Watopia Mountain. I guess I climbed that 3 or 4 times in one session. So I was on the bike for about 4.5 hours. I would go up, go down, then I'd turn around and go back up. And honestly, the hills were fine. Even with the inability to change gears, I got up the hills okay. So I think if I would have had, an extra gear or 2, it would have been an even more efficient day.
Okay. So before we start getting into the actual race here, what cassette are you using?
I ran an 1128, and I had the Vermont Tremblant and kept it for Placid, but I ran a standard 5339 in the front.
Okay. Just so we can all be on the same page, and thankfully you're a little gear-oriented and you understand what I'm asking there. Yeah. Now, did you get injured at all in training in the previous 6 months going into Placid?
You know what? I was pretty lucky. The only thing I did, and this is, I think it's typical me, the week before, really the Tuesday night before the race, I was in a hotel, and then being Mr. Overachiever, I took my foam roller. It's race week, so you're not going to get any faster, but you can sure get slower. So I was trying to stay loose, put the foam roller on the floor, and I rolled my hamstring, and my hamstring popped. it was audible. I heard it and I freaked out. It's Tuesday night. I got two good friends that are triathletes. One's an athletic trainer. One is a physical therapist. I was on the phone with those guys up until the race. Like, what should I do? Am I going to be okay? And they were both like, well, I don't know. You weren't running when it happened, so it's probably okay. I said, does it hurt? I said, yeah, it hurts. So I really wasn't sure what the day was going to bring. So I did some releases on it. I would stretch it and roll it lightly, just try and get some of that scar tissue loose. And they felt that maybe it was scar tissue that was popping. But it hurt a little bit during the race, but honestly, not bad. It got hit once in the swim and I felt it. And on the run at one point, I felt it. But let's face it, 20 miles.
Were you going up or down a hill at that point, or were you on a flat?
I was going, starting up a hill.
Okay.
Starting up a hill, which kind of makes sense a little bit. But, at mile 20, I kind of think everything hurts on the runs. But it may not have even been the hamstring, but everything hurt. I felt the hamstring. But it really wasn't that big of an issue. And I was concerned going in. I was like, here we go, another injury-plagued attempt. So.
Okay. Now, how many hours a week did your training max out at?
I think I got up to 17 for a lot of. I told myself I wouldn't do that again. But when you start adding everything up, I mean, I was getting 12 on the weekend. So if you're doing anything at all during the week, you're 15, 16, 17. And that was pretty much from May forward. I think every week, except for every fourth week was kind of a lower volume week, a little more intensity, kind of a testing week. I think I was 15, 16 hours plus. So. Okay.
Now, were there any days during your build-up that you just mentally didn't want to train?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of it was due to the indoor nature of what I was doing. I don't mind to run for 3 hours. It's kind of, but when you get up Saturday morning and you're faced with a 5-hour indoor ride on your bike, that's a little daunting. It was good. I had some company. I had some friends that were training for other races that were following the same plan, and we would hook up through an app called Discord.
What is that called now?
Discord.
What is it?
It's just it's a voice channel app, and you can create a channel. And we started out the winter doing long Zwift rides, just base miles, and we would all log in at the same time, ride the course together and chat. And these were guys that I used to train with when I lived in the South. They're still down there. And then as we transitioned into the more structured stuff that Trainer Road offers, for the most part, we would do these long rides together. Now, they lived in warmer areas than me, so they got outside a little quicker than I did. And once our race schedule started to diverge a little bit, I found myself kind of by myself on those rides. And that's when it really got old. But, it's convenient. You can pack all your nutrition right there on the table beside you.
If you got to use the bathroom, you can just
hop off
and go to the bathroom. It's right down the hall.
10. Yeah, refilling bottles if you need to. It's a minute and a half versus finding the gas station and you're in there for 15, 20 minutes. So a 5-hour ride really took about 5 hours, whereas outdoors, 5 hours of ride takes a little bit longer, and there's no coasting indoors either.
Right. You're working.
You're working the whole time.
Now, when you're not training, racing, or traveling for work, what are you doing? I know you do work about 70 hours a week, you said?
Yeah, it gets up there. You count the travel, yeah, it's right there. But I honestly, I'm always training for something. That's what I like to do. Okay, my wife and I we go on vacation. We'll go hiking. We're not big sit at the beach people. We'll go Switzerland, hike in the Alps, or we'll go to like one of the national parks in the States, Yosemite, Yellowstone, and spend a week there. We like to be outdoors, so we're always active. But I'm always on my bike, so that's probably my downfall. My swimming could be a lot better if I would swim year round, but it seems it's race necessary. I get in shape to race, but then I'd much rather be riding in the off season.
Right. I know you said you have a family, right?
Just my wife and I. So
okay.
No kids, no dogs.
Nice.
Like that.
Now, how big of an issue was balancing life, work, and training? You had mentioned something about you told your wife you weren't going to be doing long course stuff anymore, and then you did.
You know what? It was better this time and I guess I hit the perfect storm. So on the weekend, my wife's a personal trainer. So we actually would be coaching Saturday morning from 7 a.m. to noon and Sunday morning from 7 a.m. to noon. So I've got a 5-hour block to get my long stuff in. And so for the most part, it was okay. During the week, I used my hotel time wisely. I mean, it's not uncommon for me to be down at the pool in the hotel or on the treadmill at 9 or 10 o'clock whenever I get a window. So that really didn't eat into any time. So this was probably the first time since I've been racing any kind of long course stuff that it really wasn't that much of an imposition for her. little bit of travel for the races this year. I mean, the last 4 or 5 years I've raced locally in Buffalo, the longest drive being an hour and a half, maybe to Rochester or Watkins Glen, New York. But so we had a 7-hour drive to Mont Tremblant, and then Placid was about 6, and you're gone for a while for those. So that was a little bit different. She was a trooper, but for the most part, pretty manageable.
Okay. Now, with this race schedule that you developed, how much of the time management skills did you have to employ to get to where you are at this point in your athletic endurance pursuit?
I think it's all time management. I mean, you got to be disciplined to do the work, but I think time management is what derails a lot of people.
Right.
For me, so I learned that in college. I was a college athlete. I played football in college, and it was a job. We started at 6 in the morning and then went till 9 o'clock at night, and every minute was accounted for. And if you couldn't manage your time and find time to study, find time to train, find time to watch film, you weren't going to play and you weren't going to get your degree. So I had to learn at a pretty early age. And as I've transitioned into professional life, with the job I do now, there's just no way I could do it if I couldn't budget time and prioritize things. And I think that there's definitely pitfalls there, without a doubt.
I really like what you just said. You said budget time.
You got to put it in your planner. You got to put it in your
time. Like, you need to know, hey, look, this isn't like just willy-nilly putting time wherever you want it to and just putting training wherever you want it to. No, every training has a block, and it's going to be prioritized, and work is the same priority level as everything else. Everything is the same priority in the sense, and you have to spend everything accordingly.
Yeah.
I really like that.
I think if you don't, I mean, that's one of the biggest excuses I think that prevents people from achieving any kind of fitness goal. If you hear people that want to get into better shape, I can't find time. And that's kind of a fallacy, right? I mean, you have to make time for things that are important. If it's important, you'll make time for it. Kind of my backstory, I was almost a 300-pound offensive lineman in college. So, right now I'm 6'4", 203 or 4 pounds. When I was 12, I was 6'3", 203 or 4 pounds. So I was always a really large kid. Then I got to college and I was heavy, and I wasn't too heavy, but there's really not a lot of reasons to be 300 pounds in adult life. I don't need to push people around anymore, not too often, which is a good thing because I get broken in half now if I tried. But for me, well, if it's a long run, when I see my teammates at reunions and things, the first thing they say is, "Wow, you look like a wide receiver." And it's like, well, the problem is I still run like an offensive lineman. I'm just slow for longer. So, but no, I dropped a lot of weight and I made time for it. I just decided that it was healthier. High blood pressure runs in my family. I've had several family members with heart procedures and bypass surgeries, and didn't want to go that route, man. So I made it a priority, and I started out running. I dropped weight quickly, and then I didn't get into the try thing until probably 6-7 years after I dropped all my weight. So it's just been a nice way to stay in shape and compete. I really miss the competition aspect that I had in football. And tries, you definitely get that regardless of the distance that you're doing.
Is the high blood pressure and health problems part of your overall reason why you're active as much?
Yeah, definitely. I was kind of a sports medicine major in college, so I learned a lot about it. And at the time, it was just something that interested me. And my father had some of those cardiac issues. I had an uncle whom I was very close to that passed away about, 8-9 years ago. Same kind of issues. So my family's always been a big family, right? It's from a little town in Virginia. They live and die by their high school sports. Football typically is the primary leader there. So my family's all a bunch of big people, and there's not a lot of endurance athletes in my family. In fact, I'm the only one, and they still think I'm crazy. I probably am to some degree. But for me, it was important that I didn't want to be on medication my whole life for that kind of stuff. I mean, I wanted to be able to shop at the mall. I mean, my jacket size in college was a 56 long. So it's kind of hard to find that. If you're going to wear a suit every day to work, which luckily in my job I have now, I don't have to, but I've had to do that in the past. And it's tough to shop for that. So that was a big driver. But I also like the competition thing. I remember when I first got in, I was running still, but I hadn't been doing tries. And I said, I wonder what these Ironman races are like. And I looked up a training plan for one. I was like, oh, those guys are crazy. I'm not going to do that. And then lo and behold, like 5 years later, I started my first one, and they're addictive. So you keep coming back at some point. So it's a little bit of everything.
That makes sense. Now, when did you start traveling to the race venue? We're going to shift gears from training to actually start talking about when did you start traveling to the race?
Yeah, so I left on a Thursday. Yeah, I worked Monday to Wednesday, was in the field actually in a hotel on Tuesday night when I had the aforementioned pop on the scar tissue. So we got into Saranac Lake on Thursday evening and have some family there. So we stayed with them. We stayed about 15, 20 minutes out from Placid, which actually turned out to be really nice. Okay. So we had to hang out weren't involved in all the craziness downtown, could get away and just kind of relax and get off my feet.
So you didn't have a lodging expense?
Right. No lodging expense. Just really had to drive there. So a tank of gas each way, basically. And then we bought food for the house, and our host, we took him out to dinner every night because that's the least we could do. So in terms of what race travel can cost, we got off pretty easy.
Especially for this race.
Yeah. I think some of the hotels were $450 a night with a 5-night minimum.
Yep. The city of Lake Placid apparently actually has that in their city commerce for that week.
Wow. So
they make it a 5-night minimum.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people, they pay it, right? I mean, they've got a great venue. It is a great course, but
they really have people by the undercarriage on this race because there's nowhere else to stay.
Right.
There's Airbnbs, but those are just as much, if not more.
They are. And they want, that's really tough too, because we actually booked VRBO at Mont Tremblant. And I started working on that race like the day after it happened last year. And what I found was that a lot of the property owners weren't updating their prices. So if you're trying to get in early for one of these things, and these things sell out, a lot of them still sell out pretty quickly. Like Placid probably going to sell out really quickly. Maybe it sold out today. I don't know. But they don't update their prices until it might be, November. So I was
in a rush.
No, and I was sending requests to people all over the place before I even thought about my wife's cousin living in Saranac, and I kept getting responses, "We'll get back to you. We haven't set our prices. We'll get back to you." And I'm that whole time prioritization thing. I said, "No, I want to get this done now." It was really frustrating. So, it's a little bit different. It's not necessarily the smoothest process you envision.
Okay. Shifting gears a little bit to talk about your training again, being that we've already talked a little bit, what was your taper like going into this race?
So I did my last long brick 2 weeks out. So I did a 4-hour ride and a 10-mile run. And then after that, I took a Monday off, and then everything was, I would do my swims kind of independently. I'd swim maybe a couple thousand yards, 2,500 yards with a little bit of intensity. But the bike runs were always bricks, and it was short but intense. And then they kind of tapered down a little bit further as I went along. So Wednesday, I think, but actually, you know what? The week of the race, after I popped that hamstring, I didn't do anything other than swim a little bit. But up until that point, it'd been, hour and a half ride, hour ride, 30-minute run. Then 2 days later, 50-minute ride, 20-minute run with 3 or 4 1-minute bike intervals at race pace. And I think race pace was defined as the highest perceived power you will exert. So if you think you'll go up the hills at 260 watts, do a minute at 260. The run was just race pace and, Ironman race pace. Unless you're Chris or some of the other guys on the team that can be nicknamed Speedy, my Ironman race pace, I was hoping for, 8:45, 9 minutes a mile. So
gotcha.
No real intervals there. So
all right. So now that we talked about that, let's go ahead and talk about the venue a little bit more here. How was the check-in process at the village?
Check-in was great. I went late in the day on the last day. So ended at 5 o'clock. I rolled in at 4:30. Not a soul. I was in and out of there, and it took longer to find parking. It really did. I learned my lesson at the previous race in Canada up in Mont Tremblant where it took hours. The bike check-in process was a little rocky, right? So they do a great job in organizing these things. I'm always amazed at how well organized they are when you have so many people and so many spectators. But the bike check-in, there was the athlete meeting on the last day, on the Saturday, was at 2. So I think a lot of people felt like, okay, I'll go to the meeting at 2, then I'll drop my bike off. So the line to drop the bike off was probably 100, 150. And they weren't necessarily moving us through the line that quickly. So that probably took, by the time I got in line, that probably took 45 minutes just to get up until you were into the transition area. They could have probably smoothed that out, but It's not the biggest town either, so you can't shut the street down.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, because all you're doing is saying, all right, do you have your bracelet on? Are there numbers on your bike? All right, come on in.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing, because I volunteered at Ironman Texas this year, and this guy came in. We took his bike. He didn't have any numbers on his bike. None. What do we do with his bike? That's the question. Like, if you don't have numbers on your bike and a fool where they take your bike for you and you don't put it on the rack, they don't know where to put it.
So, and I was talking about that with some of the volunteers, and I think there was a little bit of miscommunication between the Ironman officials and some of the Lake Placid volunteers, because when you check in and get your bike number, they proactively tell you, hey, this just needs to be on both sides of your seat post of your bike. You can cut this as long as the number is visible on both sides.
Yep.
Well, so that's what I did, because who wants that thing flapping around in the wind? Well, what they didn't tell you, which is kind of a key piece of information, is, on the number itself, it says Lake Placid on it. Well, you can cut off, they don't tell you that's got to be on there and visible. So everybody cut that off. A lot of people just had the number visible, no Lake Placid. And they were really pushing people to go get in a different line and have somebody cut just that Lake Placid part so they could stick that on the bike. And the question is, so what's the idea there? And the response we got was interesting. They said, well, if the motorcycle guy comes up beside you and he sees your number, he's not going to know whether you're doing Lake Placid or not. I said, but I'll be on the Lake Placid course with numbers on my bike.
I see your confusion there. And to clarify, so again, I volunteered at Ironman Texas. There was a bandit on the course, believe it or not.
Okay.
Somebody came in.
I can see that.
It was a little punk kid. I say little punk kid. He's probably in his 20s, early 20s.
When you're in 40s.
He came in the bike, and we took his bike like everybody else, right? And he's sitting there looking at us, or looking at the volunteers, like, what are you doing with my bike? And we're saying, keep going, just like everybody else. Go that way. Go get your run bag. Go run a marathon. And he doesn't have clip-on shoes. There's no numbers on his bike. He doesn't have a bracelet on. There's no number on his helmet. There's no numbers on his arm. He isn't wearing a triathlon watch. There's no bike computer. There's no power meter. This bike looks like it was from Walmart. And we started looking at it, and he started saying, I just need my bike so I can go. And the Godfather, looking back on it, like, after this already happened and we already let him go, he's like, we should have said, if you want your bike back, show me your driver's license. That's all we want. We want to see your driver's license. We're going to take a picture of that, and we're going to put it in our system for non-racer for life. Yeah. And, they have the authority to do that. And
that makes sense.
They don't care. Like, one offense, you're done.
They were taking pictures of the bike. So when you checked it in, they wheeled your bike up, and that made a lot of sense to me. Like, your numbers had to be on it. They took a picture. There's probably a really good reason to have Lake Placid on the side of your bike. I didn't think the reason they gave me made a lot of sense, because you've got the bracelet on, you've got the thing on your helmet. I don't know, you got the chip on, unless you forget your chip. So, but that really did slow the process down, because there was almost, I would say, 45 to 50% of the people online had to go get the guy to cut off the Lake Placid off of other stickers, and we had to stick that on our seat post. And they actually ran out of stickers.
Wow.
It's a small thing, but you expect registration to be hectic. It's the day before, though. You'd love not to be on your feet
for a 20th year anniversary.
Yeah,
you would think.
Yeah, but the volunteers were great. They were really good. They did a good job.
I think they were better last year, though. Just my.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was there last year.
Okay, nice. Sure they were.
So you get done with the check-in process. You get your bike in there. Are you doing anything special to your bike that is out of the ordinary that beginners or first-timers don't know? I mean, obviously, you need to bring a pair of scissors.
Yep.
So that way you can cut the stickers. Put them on.
Of course. I don't do a lot different to my bike. I really don't try and introduce anything differently that I haven't trained with. And that's kind of a cliche, but it's so true, right? So the only thing I bring with me is I run a disc wheel in the back, and instead of buying those neat little covers for the inflator that covers the wheel, I get like clear tape, like packing tape, and I take scissors down or take the tape and I inflate my tire and I cover the hole so I don't have air flowing into the disc. But not really. I mean, if you're doing special stuff to your bike, 20 hours before you race, it's probably not good.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So after you get your bike checked in, you're going out to eat to get something to eat. What are you getting to eat?
We went back and actually ordered a little bit of pasta from a local place in Saranac. So I had like a linguine dish with, I think, some shrimp. Nothing crazy. Really, the big meal that morning was breakfast, and I had to eat some lunch. But I found if I eat a ton at night, the whole, you hear about the carbo load, and I used to do that, but you're so full that it's hard to go to sleep. And it's hard enough to go to sleep anyway. So the last thing I want to do is be bloated all night. So I usually eat a sensible dinner with some carbs, some protein, a little bit of fat, but most of that starts that week of the race where you're jacking up your salt content a little bit, few more carbs, and then the morning before, have a big breakfast.
Okay. Now, go ahead.
No, I know people eat pancakes. For me, I had probably a couple of bagels with peanut butter and banana. I had a couple bowls of cereal, which is really out of characteristic for me, but then that's an out of characteristic weekend too. You eat a little bit different.
Okay. Yeah. Now, how much sleep do you think you actually got the day before the race or the night before the race? I
did okay on this one. I think so. I laid down, finishing dinner around 6:30. Hung out for a bit, stretched, and I laid down in the bed at 8:30. I wasn't tired yet, so I turned on, I have a TV app on my iPad, and I turned on Direct TV and started watching, Caddyshack was on. Like, oh, great, right? So I actually watched, I had Caddyshack on, and I kind of fell asleep watching Caddyshack. So I probably fell asleep by like 9 o'clock, and I woke up at 4, and I think I only woke up once or twice. So I probably got 6.5, 7 hours, which the night before, I'll take that. And I probably got 9, the night before. They say the night before.
Yep.
It's when you've really gotta dial that in.
Okay, so you wake up on race day morning.
Yeah.
You got your sleep. Mm-hmm. What is your race day morning ritual like before you leave where you're staying?
Okay, so coffee. First thing, get up, get some coffee. For me, the pre-race meal, I do really well with a bagel and some peanut butter and maybe a banana. I mean, I don't go crazy. I don't, just enough to keep me from getting hungry that morning, but also something that's pretty easily digestible, a little bit higher. Something like a bagel your body can burn through. It doesn't require a lot of energy to digest it. Not a lot of fiber. So that works well for me. And eat that and grab my stuff, which a lot of my stuff's in the car already. I'll hop in the car and start the drive to the race site, which for us was about 18 minutes that time of morning.
Okay. Did you hit a lot of traffic?
It was not too bad. I mean, Saranac's kind of a popular place for some people to stay. I mean, I think most people want to stay in Placid because you wake up in your hotel, you walk to the venue, and that would have been nice, but
costs a little bit more.
And we got to stay with some friends. We actually had a house versus a hotel room, which is definitely nice. We got to cook a little bit. But there were some cars on the road, but everybody going to the race site, so it wasn't bad. Parking's always kind of the biggest stressor. Where we're going to park? How am I going to get to the race site? And
you had Sherpas.
I had my wife, but we got caught up we got herded into a lot, and it wasn't where we intended to go. Like, she had a cooler packed and everything, and I don't think she got back to the cooler that day, but it worked out. It was about a mile from the oval, and we hopped on a shuttle. So I was out of transition. All my Gatorade and stuff in my bottles and my Cliff Bars in my bento box. Tires checked. I was out of transition I think it closed at 6, and I was out at 5, probably 5:35.
Okay, so you take that half-mile walk down to Mirror Lake.
Yep. Went down to Mirror Lake, got a little swim, not too much of one. Like a bonehead. I was one of those boneheads I mentioned earlier that left my chip in the hotel. So I had to go get a new chip. So I played rookie 101 a bit. But minor thing. It's, I was glad to know when I got to the 10, I wasn't the only one. So the guy was like, don't panic. You're like the 25th guy who got to come through without their chip. So, got that taken care of. I got in the water. I swam a little bit. Nothing crazy. I mean, for that long of a race, you're going to warm up. If it's a sprint try, I kind of want to be sweating already. But for an Ironman, just get loose, make sure your wetsuit doesn't have any issues, and then go get in the corral and get ready to go. So for the most part, that worked out.
Okay. Now you're standing in your corral, getting ready to go off. This is a rolling start. Where did you seed yourself at?
I got in the 110 group. Got in the 110 group.
Okay.
So go ahead.
What was your mindset at this point?
So, when I did my first one in Idaho, I had a good friend of mine that is pretty the time, he was very experienced at these, and he's not a bad triathlete. He said to me, if you ever feel good during the swim or the bike, slow down. You're probably going too fast. And so I try and go into the swim with the idea that I want to have a good swim, but I want to be steady. I had heard some people that had done the race previously talking about the fight to stay over that table in Mirror Lake, and that you'd be better off staying left of that. So I tried to stay into the left where I was. And you hit a few people on the first loop, but you come around the second loop, it's kind of thinned out some. So that seemed to work well. I did have a wetsuit issue that probably cost me 6, 7, 8 minutes, but that's part of it. And I noticed in the first 5 or 6 minutes that I felt like there was excessive water coming into my suit. Water gets in your suit. That's part of how the suit works and keeps you warm. Not that water was cold. But I felt like there was water going in my back. So I reached up, and the Velcro flap had come undone. So I didn't think anything of it. So I closed it, finished the first lap. And as I was running into the water for the second lap, I could hear water sloshing around. And, my brain didn't register what it was until I got to about the same point on lap 2. And I realized what had happened was my zipper had come down, had worked its way down probably about 3 inches, which is not a ton of space. But what had happened was water was going into the suit, and the zipper had, some of the lining of the wetsuit, that interior flap, had gotten stuck in the teeth of the zipper. So I couldn't close it. So I tried once with one hand to close it, couldn't get it closed. And I swam a little bit more, got frustrated. I said, all right, I'm putting 2 hands on this sucker. So by now the lake's probably 7 feet deep. I put both hands on the lanyard on my wetsuit. And when you put both hands up, you sink. So I was standing on the bottom, yanking on this thing. It's not coming up. So I said, the heck with it. I'll get through the swim. I'll be slower, but I think I can finish it. And when I popped up, there was a lady in a kayak coming for me because I probably looked like I was drowning. So I had to hold her off. I said, no, I'm good. But, I closed the flap and I finished the swim. But when they stripped my wetsuit, there's always water in those things, but I think it almost drowned the guy that pulled it off. There was a ton of water in it. So I probably, it was more of a drag suit for the second lap, if not some of the first. But it wasn't. I planned on like an hour 7 or 8, and I got in that hour 10 group. I was like an hour 15, and that wasn't so bad considering I had a couple of stoppages in the water trying to play with it. So I wasn't freaking out about that. I was kind of laughing. I was laughing at it a little bit, and I said to myself, "Well, that's the worst thing that's going to happen today. It's going to be a great day." And then we get to the rest of the story when the rain and the hail starts. But
so you were in the water playing with it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thanks. I got you. Yeah. See, on radio, this is a Seinfeld moment right here.
Oh, that's awesome.
I was in the pool. No, but it was frustrating. What are you going to do,
Gotcha. So now let's just, I got to ask you, like I've asked everybody else, the wetsuit strippers.
Yeah.
Were they in the grass?
I came out. Yeah.
They were.
This is a joke. I'm not picking up on something here. Were they in the grass?
They were not in the grass.
I don't know.
They were in the sand.
That's right. They were in the sand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they were making people sugar cookies before they got on the
112-mile
bike ride.
Listen, man, I had so many traumatic things happen that day. I blocked that part out. But you're right. They were in the sand.
Yeah.
They were in the sand. Yeah. And at that point, you're just so ready to get the wetsuit off. You don't care. But yeah, I did notice that. A little gritty running down to the T1.
Yeah. That's one thing I wish they would have changed from last year to this year that I made sure I brought up to plenty of people to say change this for especially the 20th year anniversary. Like, come on, you can make this better.
Yeah.
So you're heading down to T1. How was T1 for you? You get your bag, go in the tent.
T1 was fine. I probably was in there a little bit too long. I was checking my handy a little bit because it did get somebody kind of swam over me once and I felt it. So I was playing with that a little bit. And by the time I got all I got you. I see where your mind's going, man. I got to keep it. I used to be an elementary school teacher, so they didn't pick up on stuff like that. But I was trying to make sure that was fine. It was. By the time I got my shoes on and got my nutrition into my suit, then of course you have the 5-minute run. It seems like it takes 5 minutes to get from the half mile transition. So I was probably in the tent for like 8 or 9 minutes, but it was like a 15-minute transition. But it felt fine. I left and I felt good and headed out. And it really wasn't raining then. It looked like it was going to rain, but we were okay for the first, probably 10 miles of the bike. So T1 was fine.
Okay. So you head out of T1. There is a massive downhill past the ramp. So you go down a little bus ramp, take a horseshoe basically, and then you take a right, then you go down this massive hill.
Yeah.
Were you prepared for the gearing there?
Well, yeah, I mean, the massive hill for me going down it, I just let it fly. So, that was easy. I didn't, my philosophy on some of these things, if I can go 25 or 30 miles an hour down without pedaling, I'm not pedaling. So I'll just go downhill, let momentum pick it up, and I'll get in the right gear. Because after that, you can pretty much start climbing for the first 10 miles. There are a couple of flat-ish sections, but, it's up. So the gearing was working fine. It wasn't raining. And, I got down that and started up the hills. And I got to about the time I got up to the 10-mile marker, which is right about where you crest that first set of hills on the course. That's where the rain started. And that's, you have a little bit of a flat section, and then you start down the keen descent. And the keen descent was hairy, the first loop. It was raining sideways, some 30-mile-an-hour crosswinds, probably a little bit more. I heard that Heather Jackson hit hail on that stretch. I didn't see hail, but I heard it was out there. We just had sideways heavy rain. So even sitting up on the bike, and some people were taking chances. You know what? I set up, was still going 40, 42, 43 down this thing and getting blown around quite a bit.
Wow.
Yeah.
And with the disc, looking back on it, do you feel like the disc was the right move for you on this day?
No, if I could do it again, the thing I like about the disc on a course like that is it's got an aluminum brake track. So, carbon wheels are great, but I still don't think they're awesome when you got a brake going downhill, especially when they're wet. So I at least have one wheel that has some aluminum on it. I felt like I've got some grip. But overall, I don't think it hurt me, but I don't think it helped me. I don't think I would have been any different running like a 60 in the back or probably a 60 in the back. If I'd have thrown my other Reynolds 60 rear on, I really think it would have been a similar experience in terms of speed, getting blown around a lot less.
Okay. Now, the middle section of this bike ride from, say, miles 20 to 70, how was that for you?
That was frustrating because when the rain started, that's when my electronic shifting shorted out. So by the time I got down Keene Pass, made a left onto 86, which kind of starts that there's like a 1.5 2-mile climb there that's kind of draws out. I couldn't shift gears. So I was stuck in, at that point, because we were coming down the pass, I was stuck in my 53 in the front and my 28 in the back. So I went up that with a much bigger gear than I intended. And it definitely, I noticed, trying to keep my wattage down to, the target level was tough. To do that, I was at, 60 RPMs, 55 RPMs. And typically I'm more of a spinner when I ride anyway. So that hurt. I dealt with that or some semblance of shifting difficulty for the rest of the ride through that loop, through loop 2 until the last 10 miles of loop 2 when everything kind of dried out, the sun came out. So I basically had a fixie or a 2-gear bike for 90 miles of the ride. So e-shifting went haywire. So that was frustrating.
What was it like when you first realized that it wasn't shifting?
You
tried to shift and it didn't shift.
Yeah, it hit the rear derailleur button, nothing. And so it was frustrating, right? So you hop off, and that was, I think back on it, because, you train so hard for that thing. I felt like I was in good shape coming off Mont Tremblant, where I didn't taper and put up numbers that were similar to what I put up 10 years ago and had a lot more juice left in the tank. So I kind of went in thinking I could do 11 and a half, 12 hours. So my inclination was to fix it. Can I get off and reset this thing, switch the batteries, something. And so I probably had 40 to 45 minutes of just, trying to repair the bike. Can I get off and get this thing to do something? And it wouldn't. So it got to the point where it came back a little bit, but then the right shifter, which controls the rear derailleur, was actually, all it would do was move me from the small ring in the front to the big ring in the front. It wouldn't control the rear at all. So when it did shift, it would shift incorrectly. So no panic. I mean, I've always kind of gone into things thinking, okay, you go in with goal A, which is to race it. And sometimes things happen and you get goal B, right? So that day, my goals got redefined. And honestly, I came through on loop 2. I didn't see my wife when I came through town. She saw me and she asked me why I looked so frustrated. Of course, she didn't know until I told her when I saw her on the run. But yeah, it's frustrating because you're thinking, okay, I don't know if I can shift at all. I don't know if I can get through another loop. and still have time to get through the marathon because I'm working so hard now. And I've never been like a 10-hour guy, but typically I think I can, I've done 12 and a half. And so I've never had to think about, am I going to finish this bike in time to where I can get through the marathon? And I was thinking that a little bit. And then I was thinking, am I going to finish this thing at all on the bike course? So a lot goes through your head. For me, it was as frustrating. I lucked out on some of the hills because I basically took the battery off the front derailleur. And for a while, only shifted with the rear derailleur. And that worked a little bit. But then it would still go in and out. When I would get on the flats, where you can actually put it up in the 53, get down the middle of the rear cassette and make up some time, with a tailwind, 23, 24, 25 miles an hour. I was in the 39, 28. I was going 15, so on the only part I got to really get any speed was that second Keene descent where the roads were dry. And I just, buried myself in the aero bars and tucked and went. And, but that's a very, with respect to the entire course, that's a very small part of it.
Right.
So
now with this issue with your ETAP system, are you wanting to change systems because of this?
You know what? I don't think so. I mean, I like it. I've got it. It's at the shop now. They're looking at it. I think, it's been there since last Wednesday when I got back. I kind of want to see how SRAM handles it. I did talk to another guy on the bike that looked like he was riding a nice bike and he was going really slow like me. And I was like, all right, man, what's your deal? He goes, my ETAP stopped shifting. I was like, hey, me too. So we talked about it for a while. So there were some issues that day, but, I've had that since it came out and it's been raced in the rain before and it did fine. So I don't know. I think it's just one of those crazy things that, I drew the black ball and the lottery that day and I had to deal with it. But I think Shimano had an issue probably 3 or 4 years ago at Lake Placid. The first year they had the DI2. It was shorting out because it rained sideways. So you just never know. But I think the benefits of it, it's so nice because on a course like that where you're on the bullhorns a lot and you're climbing, to be able to shift without having to reach up to your aero bars, I think that saves a ton of energy because a lot of times you get lazy. If you've got to reach up and shift on your aero bar, a lot of times you just try and power through that. And having it right there at your thumbs is a nice convenience.
Okay. Now, mentally, how did you tackle the later portions of the bike ride where all of the demons come out and play?
Well, maybe it's my football background. The mental stuff, I got thrown at so much in college, I played at Wake Forest, and for the most part, we got our noses beat in and week out. And you get thrown into a lot of high-stress situations. So I don't really freak out over that stuff. I was disappointed, but I'll tell you this, I was going to be a lot more disappointed if I didn't finish the thing. So, when I came through in the second loop and realized I was going to have issues, I changed my goal. I just got to finish this thing. Number one for me, because I put a lot of time in training for it. And I can probably still finish with, a 14 and a half hour time. If I can do that, that won't be a complete loss. It's not what I want, but I'll take it. But I was really thinking about my wife who had sacrificed. She has to get off work. She works on the weekends. And she came out and watched me race. She hung out at Lake Placid all day. The last thing I want to do is not finish this thing, right? So I kind of started picking places to take her back to on the next day because she really liked to hike, liked to be in nature. So that's a good course to sightsee. So I picked out a few spots, and the next day we drove back out. I did stop and try and help somebody on their bike that was having a flat, and it became not about a race at that point. Let's get through it. Let's have fun, because as disappointed as you are, you're going to be sick to your stomach if you have to ride back in the tech support van.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, to talk a little bit about your nutrition plan here. You said that you're aiming for about 400 to 500 calories per hour. What does that look like for you?
For me, I eat a variety of things when I train, so that way I can eat a variety of things when I race. I don't like to carry, I like to train with what I know I can get on the course. So what I took on the course, just plain Gatorade. I had a bottle in I had a fairly normally diluted bottle in my front bottle, and then on my down tube, which I have an aero bottle, I had a pretty concentrated bottle just to get a good shot of sugar if I wanted. In my bento box and in my pockets, I had Cliff bars with almond butter in them and a couple of Cliff shot blocks. So I would eat one Cliff bar an hour, maybe 1.5, depending on how I felt. It wasn't super hot, so in years past, I might have eaten a little bit more, but it seemed to work. I wasn't hungry. In fact, I wasn't super hungry when I finished, which probably means I did an okay job. I never cramped, which that was a good thing. I was getting enough salt. I did take some Endurolites. I took 2 Endurolite tablets every hour just to ward off any kind of dehydration and cramps. But then again, it wasn't super hot, so I don't know that I needed that.
Okay. Now, the last mile or two of the bike ride, are you doing anything to prepare you to start running?
I was trying to get an easier gear, and I could shift at that point. So I'm not trying to, you're not going to win the race right there. So get your legs, get some blood flowing into your legs, get used to turning your legs over a little quicker. A lot of that's downhill, except for one little steep part coming to town, which is really quick. If you hit that right, you can roll right up it. And but I think you're thinking about the marathon, going over what you got to do in transition, what you're going to take off first, what you're going to put on, what you're going to. I took some stuff out of my pockets because I had bars in my pockets that I didn't get to. I probably had, honestly, on the bike, a little too much nutrition with me, but nothing that really hurt me. But I shed some of that for the run.
Okay. Now, are you putting anything in your run special needs?
I put the socks. I put a dry pair of socks just in case it was going to be really wet, or in case I wanted an extra pair of socks with my shoes in case I was blistering. Didn't use it, and I ran right by the special needs bag, and I was fine. So I was just eating what was on the course and drinking what was on the course. By that point, you got some Coke, a little bit of Red Bull, Gatorade, pretzels, bananas, oranges, and I'd grab a little bit of something every aid station. But nothing, not like a grand feast or anything.
Okay. Now, for the run, how were the first few miles of the run?
So they weren't bad. They're downhill, which I have a hard time running downhill when I'm cooked, right? So because it's just different. So I probably was trying to operate under the assumption of, okay, I just got to get my legs moving. And I got down the hill, got down to the flat part. The Buffalo crew was there. They had a tent set up right there on the hill. So it was kind of nice to see some friendly faces. I got to see my wife and our friends that we were staying with. So kind of gave her some inkling of why it took me 7 hours to get back on the bike instead of what I told her, which was probably 5:45, 5:50. And then just get to a rhythm. I think for the first half marathon, I did okay. I mean, I think at Mont Tremblant, I ran 1:55 overall, and it took me like 2 hours to run the first part of this course. It's a much tougher course, and I was feeling good, but I think the extra work I did on the bike kind of set in on probably about mile 15, and I kept moving, but some of the hills after that, my plan was throughout the marathon, walk the aid stations. That's kind of always what I've done, get from aid station to aid station, because it gives you a mental step to get to. And that 30 seconds of walking can save you so much time on just let your legs get a little bit of a refresher. So I was doing that. On the second loop, I had to walk some of the uphills. And those two big hills, that big hill coming back into town, you're walking that thing regardless.
It's not too bad, though.
It's not too bad, but I've got a good friend of mine's. He coaches some athletes. He didn't coach me, but he and I, we trained together. We raced for the same bicycling team. And then some of the things he's told me, he's like, listen, you can run up that thing. You might run up it 30 seconds faster than you're going to walk up it if you walk up it versus meander up it. And I walked up it. So I don't know if that would have made a difference, but that's what I did. That was my plan going in. And I don't think it hurt me. At that point, I'm just trying to save the day. It's been a long day, and I'm trying to get through it without cramping. Because I know if I cramp, that's going to make whatever time I have left a lot longer.
Right. Now, the middle section of the runs from, say, 12 to 18, how's your mindset there? This is part of where you're going out in the middle of the woods on this ever-winding road that never has a turnaround, and then you finally find the turnaround out there in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. You know what? It's not bad. So at that point, I find you start to make friends with your fellow racers. I probably met 4 or 5 people and ran along the way. I actually met some of our teammates. Met John McDonald on the run, passed Damon Grimes a couple times, or we passed each other. So, but I ran with a few different people, and it was, you get each other through it. So it's kind of neat. At that point, you're trying to help support other people and just get through the darn thing. So, I felt like the worst part of the course, honestly, was when you come back into town on the second loop, you come up the hill and you got to make the right. And it's only about a mile out through there, but man, that seems like it takes forever, right? Because you can see the oval right there. You run right past it, and you're looking at your watch. Okay, it says I'm at 24 miles. Is it really a mile out to the end of this thing? And yeah, it is. So I think at that point, mentally, you're so ready to be done. And to me, that took forever. But the second part to the ski jump took a little while. The first part was fine, the first loop, because I didn't really didn't really know how long it took, right? I didn't really.
You're not really absorbing things at that point.
Yeah, you're not really. I looked at what the course was. I mean, I knew where to go, but I didn't have it pinned down to the mile marker. It's when we turned and stuff like that. The second loop I did, so I was looking for that 18.5 mile marker, which is where you turn on that course. And by then, you know where things are, and it seems like it takes a little bit longer. And you're just wiped out at that point,
Okay. So what was the funniest thing that you saw on the run course?
Well, funniest thing, man. There was a guy that was moving pretty well that wore an orange bodysuit the entire run. And I don't know if he wore it on the bike. I think he finished in 12 and a half hours. So he must be decent. But I saw that guy booking it on the run. And, it didn't get hot on the run, but it got hotter. It got up to 79, so I wouldn't want to be wearing a bodysuit. And then there were always a couple of crazy folks out there in Speedos and things like that. We have a guy in the Buffalo Tri Club that brings a stuffed beaver and wears a Speedo and stands on the side of the road and has people rub the beaver when they go by. So that in and of itself is just nuts. I see it at every race. He works all the races in Buffalo, the local ones, and you see it and you can never pass it without laughing. So it's kind of nice, but by that point you're almost numb to stuff too.
Wow. So the last few miles, how does that go for you?
You know what? Relief. It's you're closed in on the finish. You feel good. Definitely ready to get off my feet. I still don't think there's a pair of shoes that can prepare you for what the pounding your feet take. I mean, I'm a heavier guy anyway at 203 or 4 pounds. And, I'm fairly light on my feet for that big. But I was even asking one of the guys I was running with, it's like, okay, I got to ask you, is it my shoes? Do they suck? Or do your feet just hurt like crazy right now? He goes, no, my feet hurt. Because I feel pain in my feet in places I didn't know I had places. So you're ready to get off your feet, man. But at the same time, it's still a great feeling. I tell people this all the time that haven't done them. And if you ever think you can't, go do one. Just go watch the finish line, right? I mean, you're going to see people that, you can do this. You just got to be willing to put in the time, right? I mean, for the most case, if you put in the time, you can complete one of these things. But I tell my dad all the time, and this is really hard for him to stomach because, like I said, I come from a football family. College football, was a scholarship athlete, and he's used to seeing this big, strong kid, which I'm not a kid anymore, and I'm not big and strong anymore. But I say, Dad, after 4 years of college football, and I was lucky enough to get to play on a nationally ranked team, I have a bowl ring, which I'm super proud of. But there's no better feeling in sports than running down that chute at an Ironman. And that's why every time I say I'm not going to do another one, I kind of always cross my fingers because there's probably going to be another one at some point in the future. Just maybe not every year, but it's a great feeling, and it's hard to replicate. Yeah. You just learn about yourself.
Now, the point where you get to where you can take that left and go to your second loop or take that right to go into the oval.
Uh-huh.
That feeling right there, how was that?
That was awesome because I tell you, when I made the left for the second loop, one of the female pros went flying by me and made the right. I was like, oh, my goodness. I was like, she is absolutely off. I don't know who it was. But, it's great, and I didn't know what the finish was like. I knew we finished kind of in the oval, but you don't know what to expect. You haven't done the race. So
you don't want to ruin that for yourself by knowing what to expect either. You want that to be the mystery. You don't want to see the finish line set up yet. You don't want to have that in your mind. You want to come around the corner and be like, wow.
Yes.
You want to open that box right then and save that moment for that.
You're right. And the other part of that, too, is you're so close. I kept looking for, okay, they're going to run us out and back somewhere. There's going to be a loop up a steep hill. It's going to be like a cruel, unusual torture punishment. But no, you run into that thing, and it's great. It's lined with, it's mobbed with people on both sides. You got the boards up, you're on that Olympic venue. And the only thing I can liken it to was a friend of mine years ago went over and did Challenge Roth. And I guess there's a hill on Challenge Roth that you climb. And it's very Tour de France like. There are fans right out on the road. That's kind of what it felt like, and it's just a neat feeling. And for me, I mean, that's 4, but I've done 3 previously. And I think Mike Riley had been the announcer at every one of them. But in every other one, I came through with a group of people. And I never got the Kevin Smith, you are an Ironman. So when I went through, I got it this time. And I had never told my wife that story, and I was sharing that with her. And I guess Eric and our team posted that on Facebook that, he got the video of me crossing. And that was the only part I really mean, like you expect to finish it, right? Unless you get hurt or unless something happens that you really can't finish mechanically. I knew I was going to finish it, but I don't know. That's just kind of a neat thing, and I think that's part of the experience. But I've still been really satisfied. Yeah, but it's really kind of cool because he's so iconic in the sport, and that's come to be a big part of finishing one of those things. I don't have the tattoo yet, though.
Me neither. Now,
Me neither.
Once you get on the red carpet, did you stop and just enjoy the few moments that you had on the red carpet, or did you run as fast as you could down that thing?
I didn't run as fast as I could. I ran. You know what? For me, it was kind of a different finish. We had a member of our track club in Buffalo that was scheduled to be there and had raced it before. He passed away like 2 days after Mont Tremblant, and we had his number and everything. So many of the Buffalo tri people wore armbands with his number on it, and so I actually carried his number across, and it was kind of cool. So that was a big motivator for me as well, and just getting through the darn thing, because I figured, you know what, Joe would love to be here, and he's probably watching us. So that was important. But no, I don't know. I've never been a big. That was always my knock in college when football. I was never a celebrator. I think I expect to be there. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I could probably celebrate more. But I was an offensive lineman, man. If somebody knew who I was, it was bad, right? It's either I got called for holding or I got my quarterback killed. So I got used to living in anonymity, and I just kind of go through, give myself a fist pump, and go to the pizza buffet.
Okay. So after you cross the finish line, you go to the pizza buffet, then what?
Then you have to actually get up from the pizza buffet. I found that very difficult. And this is something that my wife and I have to work on. We didn't. She swears we talked about the post-race plan and where we're going to meet. I don't remember that. So, and I guess the problem was that we might have talked about it in the drive over to the race that morning. And at that point, you're not listening to anything.
You are in your mind already.
So I got my bags, went outside, walked out. The only way you can go out thinking, okay, she's been to these, she'll figure this out. That's where I had to kind of spill out. And I had my gear bags, which are kind of heavy. You got your helmet, shoes, you got 3 or 4 of them. So I sat against the fence from maybe 9:30 until 11, waiting for my wife to find me. And what do they say if you're lost in the woods? Stay put, right? So I stayed put. And sure enough, at 11 o'clock, I saw her walk by, and I grabbed her. So we have to plan that part better, but I just sat there and watched people come through right before they entered the chute.
Wow. So how was your recovery process from this race?
I've forgotten how long it takes to recover. I'm still kind of groggy. Took 3 days off completely. Then Friday, actually, I guess I took 4 days off completely. Friday, I went for an easy swim. Saturday, really did some core work, stretching. And yesterday, I got on my bike, my road bike. My tri bike's still being looked at, but I rode probably a couple hours. But we're talking zone 1, zone 2. Avoided the group ride altogether because, I love to go mix it up with the roadie crowd. It's probably not a good day for me to be doing that because you just don't have a lot of snap left in your legs right now.
Right. Now, looking back on it, how well prepared for this race do you think you were?
I think without the issues, I felt pretty good. I mean, I think flat course, and I was basing my goal time off some like Louisville, which is hilly but not mountainous, right? It's rolling, hotter, and then Coeur d'Alene, which is kind of similar. The run's got like one hill on it, but and the course it's a rolling bike course, but it's not a climbing course. I was thinking I could come into this and maybe do 12 hours, and I think I could have done that without the issues. I mean, I was tired when I finished. But even with I figured the bike cost me 30 minutes on the run, maybe 40 minutes. I probably would have been 4:15 on the run off a better bike. And I would have been right there. So I don't know if I would change a lot in training. I might get out and maybe do a couple longer bricks and maybe one other long run. But honestly, I felt good going into it. I didn't overtrain, which has been a fault of mine in previous years because I like to go hard. I like intensity, and you need to do some of that for Ironman, definitely. But I think I was pretty good. So I'd probably maybe try and get outside a little bit more, and it might have been helpful to actually get to the course and ride. But then again, it's a 5-hour drive, 6-hour drive, so that's easier said than done.
Right. So what's something that you learned about this race that you'd want to pass on to someone who hasn't done this course before?
You know what? Never panic. You're going to have your race goal, and don't be afraid to redefine that. I mean, do everything you can to hit it, but things are going to happen in any of these things. It's such a long race that if you let it get in your head, it might derail you from even finishing. And I think that's got to be the worst feeling. Doing all that work, getting to the venue, and then letting something get in the way. Hey, if you finish in 16 hours and 59 minutes, guess what? You're still an Ironman, and never feel bad about finishing one of those things. It's such a long day. I mean, enjoy the process, but don't be afraid to have plan B, because if you don't, I mean, you're going to need it at some point. Right. And I think that was definitely what I took away from it and what helped me.
That makes sense. So you had to give yourself grace along the way.
Yeah. I mean, I read a quote by Peter Reed once when, he was winning Kona every year. And he said, it's weird. It's so physically demanding that it's ironic that it usually comes down to who's the smartest or who doesn't. Basically, it's a mental game, right? I mean, you have to kind of sometimes put the physical part aside and figure out ways to solve your problem, to get that next step forward, whatever it may be. But I carried that, and I think it helped me on Sunday, because there were definitely times where I felt like, geez, I'm going to be rolling in at 14, 15 hours. I mean, I've done these before. I know I can finish. I came to race it, but then you start thinking about, gosh, I don't want to be that. I can't be the guy that doesn't roll in and finish the thing. And that happens. I get it, but do everything you can to avoid it, barring injuring yourself for a longer period of time. That's where you got to make the call. But I wasn't injured, so whole different story.
Okay. How could Ironman have made your race experience better? You know
what? Make them less expensive. No, they do a good job. And I will say that they are expensive and they're at times prohibitive, but they've addressed that a little bit. I think the check-in process for the most part was really good. The bike check-in would have been better, could have been better. The only thing I would say that really could make it better for the competitors is maybe keep spectators off the beach until people are in the corrals, because the way they're running it right now, if you're trying to get in that 110 pace group, if you're not in the corral, basically when the pros go off, you're not going to get in. They've got an opening the size of a hotel room door, and they're trying to filter all the athletes through. So what happened was one of the volunteers actually figured out that there were some faster swimmers that were trying, not that 110 is necessarily fast, but it's faster than 2 minutes or 2 hours, and they let us hop the fence. And without that, you're stuck in the back, and nobody wants that. I mean, the people that are swimming 2 hours don't want the 110 or 115 or 120 people swimming over them, and it's just a smoother process. If they would keep people off the beach and kind of open up that corral area, get all the athletes in, and then maybe let people come down, it might be a little more efficient. I heard a lot of complaints about that. And as somebody that's not great at climbing fences at this point in life and having to jump a fence, it was...
right before you swim 2.4 miles.
Right. In a wetsuit, and it's not, there aren't steps over the fence. So
don't rip your wetsuit at this point in time. Right.
Don't rip your wetsuit. That would have been great. But and it's not the easiest thing to climb over, because, the rails are they're X's in the middle. They're not like horizontal. So there's no horizontal place to put your foot. You've got to kind of step up and get your foot up on the top of the fence and vault over, and we had fellow competitors that were helping catch us and get us in, but that was the only thing. But you know what? It's small potatoes. You got that many people there. There's no way it's going to be perfect. They do a really good job, and every time I leave one, I'm always amazed that you do get what you pay for in the Ironman races. They do a good job. Okay. So,
for first timers, what advice would you give them?
For the race, or just for that race in particular, or just in general? You know what? I think people, and I know we have a lot of swimmers on the team and I think the swim's important. I think people stress over the swim. I probably put more time into the swimming than they do in the biking and the running. I think you definitely can't bike too much in training for that race, because so much of that race is getting off the bike in condition to get through 26 miles during your marathon. You start the swim. Most cases, you're going to have a wetsuit on. You're going to float. You're fresh. I don't think too many people are having the issues in the swim, but the mental stress that comes from they consume people. I would overbike and make sure you're getting frequent runs, probably, and don't neglect that long run, especially in that last 6-month build before you get to the race.
Okay. We covered a lot about your race. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, man. It was a trying day, a lot of obstacles, but it was fun. I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I put the time in. It wasn't the speedy result I'd hoped for, but it was. You never feel bad about finishing, and just being out there. I know a lot of people that would have loved to have been there and couldn't be. So just feel fortunate you can do it and move on to the next one.
Okay. So what's next for you?
So this season, just short ones. I'm going to do a couple of sprints maybe next week, and then finish out the season with a sprint try and kind of South Buffalo. Thought about doing a stage race on the bicycling scene this weekend, but I'm just not recovered. There's just no way. It's not a big stage race. It's 3 stages, but I was thinking about maybe next year trying to focus on USAT Nationals and maybe pick up at 70.3 and work towards that. Probably no iron distance next year. Give my wife a break from all the crazy training.
Okay. So what races are on your bucket list?
Bucket list. I would love to do the Norseman. I mean, if I somehow got into the Norseman lottery, even I would go. So Ironman Switzerland, I would totally go to that one. Hawaii, definitely, but I'd probably rather go to Switzerland just because I love that part of the country and I love the Alps. Norseman the same way. I think any of those would be good. I think I'm sorry, what are you going to say? No, the bucket list thing, I'd rather find a destination locale with some friends. It's always better when you have a group.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So how can athletes follow you?
You know what? At TrySmitty, Twitter, at TrySmitty for Instagram, which I'm getting more prevalent in now. And then Facebook, it's TrySmitty. So, Kevin, it's pretty easy, but occasionally I'll post something here or there, a nugget.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, it's been great talking to you, and I only have one more question for you.
Lay it on me.
What is your definition of a perfect race?
Ooh. That you feel you left everything on the course and you could not have done anything differently. So that's going to have a lot of different results. But that was how I walked away from last Sunday feeling decent about it. And I was like, couldn't have done anything differently, had nothing left in the tank, and I'm not going to feel bad about that. And I think if you do that, in most cases, you're going to have pretty good days.
Wow. Were you going to continue? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we do it for fun. And, for most of us, we're not getting paid to do it. So don't get too caught up in, try to do your best, but gosh, just enjoy being able to do it because it's a great sport. Wow. It really is.
Well, Kevin, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your experience about your experience at Lake Placid. I've enjoyed hearing it. I look forward to following you in the future, and I can't wait to see what unfolds next year for you.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on, Terry. I appreciate it. And for the flexibility. A little bit crazy a few days.
Part of it. You have a good day, okay?
Yeah, you too.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you were able to learn something from today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to leave a review on iTunes or share it with a friend. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you'd like to see pictures from this athlete's race, learn more about who I am, what I'm doing, or be on the show yourself to share your story, check out my website at CoachTerryWilson.com. Until next time, continue the pursuit.